if what we have is we have our collection of notes up here. We have 12 notes in the musical alphabet. We're going to be picking the notes in the key of C. That's going to be our collection of 7 notes by applying our formula from the C, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then half step back home. Here are our 7 notes. Now, if we are in the key of C, we can apply the scale degrees of 1 through 7, right, to those collection of notes. Now, if I go from the Ionian to the Phrygian, I would like to say that's going to be 1, 2 modal half steps up, 2 continents up. But they usually call it 1, 2, 3, the 3rd scale degree. Why is that a problem? Well, in our case, what if I want to go backwards? So what if I'm on this one and I want to go backwards? What would I call that from a scale degree terminology? If I went counterclockwise, you would think it would be 1 step counterclockwise or 1 negative step. And from a scale degree, if you make this the 1, I would think that would be a negative 2nd scale degree, because this is the 1 that would be negative 2. But we can't really do a negative 2nd scale degree, in part because the inverse doesn't really make sense, because you would think there are 7 scale degrees. So you would think if I went negative 1 step backwards, 7 minus 1 would be like 6 steps forward. But that's not, it doesn't exactly work, right? And also, if I apply the terminology of the intervals of the majors and minors and so on, I'm going to get a whole different pattern of intervals of major, minor, and perfects, which again is just a complete mess, because we kind of shoehorn these major, minor, and perfect into place going clockwise based on the major scale, instead of using like a 1.5 scale degree and so on and so forth. We used the minor as like the 0.5, right, kind of thing. So the problem happens is it's a complete mess when I go in the negative direction. So let me, and we can address, so what I want to do then is try to use the current terms, but realize that's a problem. So in other words, like if I'm on this G, which is the 5, and I'm going up to the C, how far is that? From notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes up. That would be including like the oceans and the continents. If I went just up by continents, it would be 1, 2, 3. I would call those modal half steps up. But if I make a scale degree, it makes this the 1 instead of having it as the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be the 4th scale degree. So I would call that a 5 note away then, and we usually call it a perfect 4th. 5 note away, perfect 4th. But what if I'm measuring from the C going backwards to the G? Well, now what's the distance? I counted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's negative 5, right? It's a negative 5 distance. But what am I going to call the negative 5 distance? I can't, it's not normal to call it negative 5. What people will normally do is take what we say is the inverse. So I'm going to recognize that it's negative 5 back, but I'm going to take the inverse, which is 12 minus 5, which would be 7. And so a 7 note away distance is going to be a perfect 5th. So I'm going to recognize that it's actually negative 5 steps back, but I'm still going to call it the equivalent to a 7 note away perfect 5th, right? And so if I went, which makes sense if I went this way, right? If I went on this C right here and I went up, this is 5 notes between here, and then 6, 7 notes away to get to this G. That makes sense. So in other words, it's kind of like I can keep going around the block to get to the same place on clockwise rotation, or I can go backwards. So if I'm on this 2 and I go up, including the oceans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I get a distance of 5 to get to this one here, right? So then I could go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5, or I can keep taking the lap around the block. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can go 7 around. Our current naming convention is always named kind of like as though we're going clockwise around the system, right? Now, so that's one way that you can see it. Now, the benefit of that, one thing that you could argue is, well, that's good because that means that there's only going to be one distance name that always gets you from one note to the other. So in other words, if I go from the C to the G, it's always going to be a 7 note away, which would be a perfect 5th. even if I go this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, it's obviously -5, but still I use the same term, which is a perfect fifth. So the perfect fifth is the only thing that could get you then from like a C or an Ionian to the Mixolydian. And you can say, okay, I guess you can argue that, but it's not correct, right? Because we're not actually going forward. We're kind of thinking of it directionality like we're going backwards. We're going down in pitch. So I think the practical thing to do is to actually say that like a 7-note away perfect fifth, I would remember it as a perfect fifth is either going 7 forward or -5. So by default, if someone says it's a perfect fifth, I would imagine I'm going forward, but I can also then think forward 7, but I can also think it could be back 5. That will give you directionality, which again is something that a lot of guitarists just abandon completely. We just start thinking in terms of shape, and we like say this is too complicated because we have more than one string. That makes it complicated, and because the terminology is messy. Now, we also have octaves that we can put into play. We'll talk more about that later, but that's another reason why, of course, directionality is important. I need to know, am I going forward? Is it a perfect fifth going forward? Or is it a perfect fifth going backwards, right? And I'd also like to know the total distance. So later on, I can also say, well, what if I'm going from this C down to this G? It's like 7 notes away here, but this is going to be a different distance all the way down to here because it's going to be an octave higher, right? It's not in the same octave. So I'll talk more about that later. Again, that's another thing, particularly on the guitar, that we're not good at addressing. We're just going to call all of that whenever I go from the C to the G. I don't care if it's here or if it's there, if it's there, it's there. I'm going to call it some kind of perfect fifth, right? A 7-note away perfect fifth. But obviously sometimes I'm going backwards 5, and sometimes I'm going an octave up past the 7. How would I address that? Well, I would recommend you have directionality in your term and name the notes, meaning this one's going to be 12 plus 7, right? It's 7 plus an octave. Say that before you say it's a perfect fifth, and that'll help you to better understand the differences, right? And communicate it more clear. All right, we'll talk more about that later.